So in the last video, we said we were going to go to the track and we were going to test out the Radiomaster MT12 to see if it can race. I put in a few hours at the track that week here with my F1 car, as you can see. Also did some GT12, and yeah, the thing can race for sure. But I'm not going to switch to it. I am going to stick with Sanwa. Going to tell you why. There's some good, there's some bad about both radios, of course, but let's just talk about it. The first thing about the M17 that the Radiomaster just doesn't have is the comfort. The comfort factor on the MT12, it's a first generation radio. For somebody like me that relies a lot on configuring the radio for racing a certain way, there's just not enough of that built into the MT12. For example, Sanwa comes with 3 different sizes of grips that you can put on here. So you can get a big, firmer grip, or you can get a skinnier grip based on your hand or whatever. They've got multiple positions that you can also mount the steering wheel. They've got multiple positions you can mount the trigger, and they've got different actual inserts to the trigger that you can use in order to get your perfectly calibrated thumb that just feels the best for you. Now on the M12, you were able to move the trigger in and out, and I found that moving that to the outward position gave me the most amount of comfort that I could get. But just up there racing after 2 or 3 minutes, the small grip size compared to the M17 was really uncomfortable, and it just really took away from the experience. Now, can you fix that with a lot of gaffer tape and stuff like that? Yes, you can, but am I going to, and is it worth it? No, I already have one of these. So if you're going to go out and buy a radio and start racing, then I would suggest, hey, definitely go that route over something like this. Hard to recommend something like this to somebody in this day and age at the price, unless you're really getting into like high-end on-road racing, kind of like we are here. But there are other options now that people are using, like the FlySky, for example, that we mentioned in other videos in the MT12 series. It's got a lot of that functionality that I just spoke about inside of it, so you can tune it to your hand, as well as the other things that aren't annoying, like the terminology and the programming. Now, one of the plus sides of the MT12, and I don't know if it is Express LRS or what, I'm going to have to say it is that I did notice that it was incredibly fast and responsive. I noticed that I had to turn things down a lot more and just kind of like race in a different way, because it definitely felt like it was more responsive, especially with steering. And the only thing I can think of is that either the ELRS protocol is faster than what the Sanwa is, which on paper, it should be about the same. The only thing I could think about is maybe the Sanwa receivers aren't set up to communicate with servos at the same speed, the 333 megahertz, but that would almost seem impossible that somebody like Sanwa, Futaba, or whoever would not set up these individual channels hard-coded to speak to their own servos at the same speed. That just doesn't make any sense. But when it comes to like, yeah, the speed and everything of Express LRS and HTX, whatever is doing it all inside that radio, was really noticeable. It took a little bit to get used to. So that is a definite win. It was a super fast and responsive protocol. You put it in like a younger person, more experienced. You know, I didn't get anybody, there wasn't really anybody at the track that day that really wanted to even try it. But it would have been cool to have somebody that was a better racer actually drive my car, which I know runs good and runs fast, just not as fast when I'm driving it. But it would have cool to see how it would have compared with them, and maybe we'll do that down the road sometime. One thing I did notice about the actual whole ecosystem as well is that the percentages that I was dialing back my my trims or my EPA were way more like, let's say I might dial my EPA on left and right to 80% on the Sanwa. I was down into like the 40s and 50s on the actual MT12. And when setting the sub trim, I also noticed that it basically it wasn't as incremental as it is with the M17. I kind of had to go a lot, and I'm not talking about the actual step adjustment inside here of the MT12, which you can change, but it almost is like you had to like go a little bit further to make it move just a little bit. Like it was kind of odd. Don't really understand what was going on there, but we were able to trim everything up, put things on the setup station, dialed everything in like we did in the last video. And, from a racing standpoint, as far as like setting up the car, there wasn't anything that I was not able to do with that radio as I was on this one. There is one thing though. Now, when we talk about the speed, I did try on the Sanwa. The Sanwa actually has some settings built into it called feeling, which nobody can really explain. Kind of sucks. But from the best thing that a lot of people can tell is that when you change the feeling setting, you're actually like adding latency into the signal or taking latency away. So that way, if the car is a little bit too reactive for you on steering, you can add a little bit of latency or whatever it does. We really don't even know, again, and it kind of smooths everything out a little bit for you. So I was looking for something inside the MT12 that could help dial that down a little bit. So naturally I go to, okay, let's try slowing down the packet setting on Express LRS. So I went from 1,000 hertz all the way down to 50 hertz, and it made absolutely no difference. So there was no way to slow down Express LRS to match what I wanted to do here in the Sanwa. And I know other radios do this as well. And there's a lot of different ways that you can go about doing it. Just in the Sanwa, that's one click setting under steering. And you can also do it with your throttle too. So that way you're not on and off the throttle. As if you're on and off the throttle a lot, it actually is going to like smooth that out a little bit more for you as well. And I think I don't know. I don't have explanations. I'm just trying to like put everything out there that I experienced for a regular type of racing experience. So I think like with all that stuff kind of wrapped up, like those are the most important things to me, and I think to any RC racer, along with an ecosystem. On-road racers don't care about saving a buck. That's for sure. It's the wrong kind of racing if you're worried about being budget conscious. Now, you can race with a TT02, which I enjoy thoroughly, but, touring cars, the F1 cars, we're talking a lot of money, tires, batteries, all the tools and everything that you need. It is definitely not a cheap activity or hobby to be a part of. So the whole cost saving aspect is kind of out the window. The receiver sizes being a little bit smaller than something like the 493 here for the Sanwa. That's a nice little touch for sure. But again, not a deal breaker. The receiver cost, that's huge. That's why I wanted to try the little experiment. But in the end, like I said before, if you're on-road racing or off-road or whatever, you're probably not going to care that much about it. What am I going to do with it? It's back there in the bag. Thinking about throwing it in, using it in my crawlers and getting rid of the Spectrum receivers that are in there. Or maybe I will just sell it or something. Again, it's just not going to be for me. Now, if Radiomaster, again, comes out with a second generation radio, or they come out with equipment to fix some of the mechanical problems like the grip, being able to space out the steering wheel a little bit more from the radio. Some things like that that aren't like 3D printed hacks. Like, you know, I don't care about changing the wheel size and stuff. I know that's important to some people. I actually printed out a print that would have allowed me to put the Sanwa on there. I thought I would like the smaller steering wheel, but again, it was just, I'm just not good enough, and I don't want to spend the time to like get better with it. So we're just going to stick to this right here. But you know, I think the quality still that you get for that $130 is just super amazing. And you know, again, if somebody, you know, I'm thinking about the future and what it can mean for like RC and RC racing. I see what Fly Sky has done. You know, Fly Sky is a radio that comes with many RTR vehicles now, and hopefully Radiomaster can find a way to get into that area if they even want to. I don't think they could survive forever on just FPV. You know, we now see that FPV stores, goodness gracious, girl, we see now that FPV stores are starting to carry like surface equipment because RC racing is booming, believe it or not. Like, it is really, really growing. Is a good time for it to be growing. It's always a good time. I'm kind of nervous though, just because I know that like all of the real estate and all that kind of stuff that's sitting empty, the prices are through the roof to rent, and then maybe they're not selling. So maybe we'll see people that have properties start to drop the prices to renters, so that way we have more places to race and everything like that. But for right now, it seems like we're still kind of just in this kind of funk. But when it comes to like the bashing side and all that kind of stuff, like, I mean, cars are still coming out constantly and flying off of the hobby store shelves. So everybody thought it was like a pandemic thing, but no, RC is definitely here to stay, and it's bigger than ever. Certain types of racing, of course, are going to be changing, but you know, hopefully Radiomaster can find a way to get into that environment and get their radios into some of these RTRs, get more money coming in, get more feedback from people, and then we would maybe see something like that Edge TX RC racer RC skin, you know, that has the different type of screens that are made for racers or crawlers or whatever. That way it's just easier for everybody to get into and use, because again, the learning curve, if you get past everything, is still going to be the huge factor that a lot of people just are not going to deal with, unfortunately. They're just not going to do it. No matter how many videos you watch or questions you ask, people are always, you know, going to get upset. If you don't come from an FPV background, you know, you're going to be in for quite a shock. But that's it. We've rambled enough. Going back to the Sanwa, we'll play with that some more with crawlers and just kind of wait and see what happens and see what the future may hold. So we'll talk to you guys later. Peace.